Something that David does on a regular basis is a segment called Meet God, where a chance for you to look at the way in which people treat their God through the eyes of a different religion. And today it's Judaism, the 10th largest religion in the world. And I'm pleased to say that Rabbi Chaim Ingram is with us. He's coming to Adelaide for Rosh Hashanah next week, which is, literally the beginning of the year. Rabbi Ingram, good morning to you.
Good morning, Spence, and may I say to you, Shana Tova, which means it should be a good year.
Why do you say that? Why will it necessarily be a good year?
Well, we hope that it'll be a good year. We have a small prayer which has a refrain that goes, "Let the old year and its disappointments end. Let the new year and its blessings begin," because we Jews have always been an optimistic race. We wouldn't have survived otherwise.
That's probably true, because you have certainly been involved in many conflicts through the years.
Well, not of our making, but I would like to say, been involved in many of the most important events of the world.
Yes.
We've spawned two other religions. We have punched well above our weight. But the most important thing is that we have our own very distinctive message to the world. And that's perhaps the best kept secret, because although Judaism is not a proselytizing faith, we don't go out and seek converts. We do welcome them, but we don't seek them. Nevertheless, we say that every single human being has a place in the scheme of things under God, and you don't have to be Jewish to get to heaven. And so, in that sense, we are eminently pluralistic in our outlook.
Rabbi, we don't have a rabbi in Adelaide, do we?
No. Unfortunately, the last rabbi left some months ago, and the community is diminishing somewhat, one might say. But I'd like at this point maybe to say that we will be having services in the AHC, the Adelaide Hebrew Congregation, and if you're of the Jewish faith and you haven't been before, even if you have, it's a most amazing synagogue architecturally as well as spiritually. It's we call it the Roundhouse, and the acoustic there is absolutely amazing. So if you don't want to come for a prayer experience, come for a musical experience.
And come for the architectural experience as well, by the sound of it.
Yeah, yes, indeed.
Rabbi, the more I delved into the origins and the path for Judaism, the more I realised I didn't know. So, I mean, this is obviously a very small opportunity we have to try and demystify some of the aspects of Judaism. One of the things that I've always been curious about is that Jewish people are referred to almost as a nationality rather than someone who follows a specific religious faith. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, I like to say we are a civilization in that sense. We believe, and we have reason to believe, because 600,000 men plus women and children testify to it, that God spoke to an entire nation at a place called Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago. And so we became a peoplehood at that time. And so, it's not like, for example, Christianity, where if you're not a religious Christian, then you're not a Christian. If you don't believe in Jesus, you're not a Christian. But with Judaism, even if you don't keep the faith, if you don't keep all the commandments, you're still a Jew. If you're born into the Jewish faith, you're a Jew. You can't shake it off.
So Jews, if you like, have a common genetic link or heritage.
Absolutely, and there is a common bond between Jews all over the world because of that. As I say, religious, non-religious, what we call Ashkenazim Jews emanating from Europe, and Sephardim Jews emanating from the Middle Eastern countries, and hopefully we will say that there is a very strong bond between Jews in Israel and Jews in the diaspora.
Are there potential consequences in a family if a child chooses not to follow Judaism, if they're born into a Jewish family?
Look, we live in an age where there are many outside influences, and it actually works both ways. You have families where the parents are religious and the child decides that's not the way he wants to go. You also have the opposite, where parents who are not religious bring up a child, and the child decides that he wants to explore his faith and becomes religious. And that's more and more a phenomenon these last 50 years or 70 years since the State of Israel became a reality. So, look, we don't coerce our kids. We bring them up with love and hopefully wanting to practice the faith, because we believe it's a beautiful faith, a faith of optimism, a faith of joy, a faith of celebration. And we do our best for our children. We teach them Torah, or have them taught Torah, and we hope that they will continue in that tradition.
So what's the relationship like between those who are born Jews and those who convert?
All right, so you're talking to somebody who does a lot of conversion teaching. Both my wife and I do. And Judaism regards a convert to Judaism as absolutely equal with a born Jew. In fact, one is forbidden to ever remind a convert that once upon a time he wasn't Jewish. To all intents and purposes, he's a Jew like all other Jews. And in fact, there are rabbis who not many people know it, who were not born Jewish. So the sky is the limit, and so really there is, the answer to the question is, there is equality between a born Jew and a converted Jew.
I mean, that's obviously the theory and the ideal outcome. Is that necessarily always the way things pan out?
All right. So you'll have situations where people are people, and they're not necessarily acting according to the Jewish way, but they it could happen that a convert feels he's not accepted in a certain family or whatever it is. That family are acting wrongly. There's no question of that. And certainly to my experience, I've never encountered that. The converts that we've taught, sometimes the person converts for its own sake. Sometimes they convert to marry a Jewish partner. It often happens that they marry a Jewish partner and they continue building up a Jewish home. And the relationship with the in-laws is wonderful. And I think that's the norm rather than the exception.
You're listening to ABC Radio Adelaide. It's 10:14. We are talking about Judaism with Rabbi Ingram. A number of callers and texters, Rabbi, calling to tell us about Shoshana Kominsky, who is a female rabbi at the Adelaide Progressive Jewish Congregation. What sort of, I don't know how to describe it, aspects of Judaism are there? I mean, how many different arms of Judaism do we have? Orthodox Judaism, now we're having a progressive Jewish congregation. What sort of arms are we talking about here?
All right, so look, bear in mind you're talking to an Orthodox rabbi and you're going to get the Orthodox perspective. But
okay, that's fine.
The fact is that until about 200 years ago, all Jews were what we might call now Orthodox. One of the principles of Jewish faith is that the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses, plus the oral tradition that stems from the Torah, was given at Sinai, or certainly in the 40 years that the ancient Israelite people wandered in the desert, and that Torah will not be changed. And in fact, that is one of the principles of Jewish faith, outlined by the great Maimonides of the 11th century. Now, about 200 years ago, there were, one must say, sectarian movements that branched off from that, who wished to be more assimilationist, if you like, blend in more with the host culture. and therefore that's spawned a number of offshoot movements, progressive Judaism, conservative Judaism, Reconstructionist Judaism. All right, all these have their own philosophy, but it isn't authentic Judaism in the historical sense. Now, as I say, you're speaking to Orthodox rabbi, you're getting to an Orthodox perspective.
Of course.
But I will say to you that there should be, and there must be, absolutely no distinction between an Orthodox Jew and a progressive Jew. I will welcome anybody into my home, and I will welcome somebody who belongs to a progressive congregation as my brother or my sister. And to that extent, we would like to feel that we are a unified people. But of course, there is this fundamental difference of perspective.
I wanted to ask you about the Bar Mitzvah, the significance of the Bar Mitzvah. So the Bar Mitzvah is for a 13-year-old boy, and the Bat Mitzvah is for a 12-year-old girl. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
You see, we believe that girls mature earlier than boys, and I think that's borne out by facts.
So what is the significance of the Bar Mitzvah?
Okay, so Bar Mitzvah literally means the son of the commandment or daughter of the commandment, and it's at the time when the child becomes of age where he or she takes upon themselves the mitzvot of the Torah, the religious duties that are required for an adult Jew. So in that sense, in that spiritual sense, if not in a physical or mental sense fully, that child becomes an adult and is responsible for his or her own actions. And the parent is no longer responsible for the child not keeping or not keeping those mitzvot. Of course, a parent will still guide the child, but the child is responsible for his or her own religious observance at that age.
And so what are the expectations of that young person prior to their Bar Mitzvah or Bat Mitzvah? What sort of study or commitment do they need to demonstrate to successfully go through that process?
Well, okay, so there's a misconception here. The Bar Mitzvah or Bat Mitzvah is not a passing out ceremony. It is a state of being. A person becomes Bar Mitzvah or Bat Mitzvah, even if they've done no study. By the fact that they have passed their 12th or 13th birthday, they become of that age. Now, obviously, the Jewish parents who are committed want their children to be prepared for that auspicious day. And so they will engage in a period of study, a year or 2 years of intensive study prior to the Bar Mitzvah. If it's a boy, they may learn a section of the Torah to chant it in synagogue. And they will also, of course, learn the principles of the Jewish faith. If it's a girl, they will study an aspect of Bible or an aspect maybe related to their name, a biblical personality, and Jewish history, Jewish tradition, and they will be prepared to maybe give a Dvar Torah talk on what they have learned in synagogue. And the celebration, of course, which is part and parcel of the whole thing, is nevertheless secondary. The primary thing is that it's a stage, a rite of passage, if you will, that the child has reached. And so
by that age, you're expected to have reached the level of maturity when they can take responsibility for their own actions.
That's right. A former chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth, Lord Jacobowitz, used to jokingly say that sometimes Bar Mitzvah becomes a bar to further mitzvot, to further duties. It sometimes is seen, unfortunately, by some as a passing out ceremony. But among the committed Jewish family, and I always say this to a Bar Mitzvah boy who I'm teaching or preaching to, that really this is not an end, it's a new beginning. You had a mountain to climb, now you'll have a new mountain to climb. And you'll, please God, continue to grow in your Judaism and grow in commitment to the Jewish faith and the Jewish people.
A number of questions coming through via our text line. I'm speaking with Rabbi Ingram, who will be in Adelaide in the next few days. One question is, are women treated equally, particularly in the Orthodox Jewish faith?
Okay, so we have a saying, equal but different. We unapologetically say we do make a distinction between men and women, but men and women are treated absolutely equally within Judaism. That doesn't mean that there are certain rituals which women traditionally don't carry out and men do, or vice versa. In the synagogue, the men are the more active in their role. They participate actively in the service, but in the home, the woman holds sway. And it's usually the mother's influence more than the father's that determines the outcome. If the Jewish home is going to be a kosher home, a home where kosher food is eaten, if a home is going to be a home where charity is preached and practiced, where hospitality is practiced, that is usually, it's the mother who is the driving partner there. And I just want to draw attention to a beautiful ceremony that occurs during a chuppah, during a wedding, where the woman, the kala, the bride, circles her groom. And, normally we think, in patriarchal terms about the man protecting the woman. But in fact, in Judaism, it's the woman of the home who protects the man, as it were. She sets the tone for the home. And so I would certainly reject any notion of inequality between men and women, just different roles.
Another interesting question, can there be interreligious marriages involving those who follow Judaism and perhaps an Anglican or a Catholic? Okay,
so our approach is that, look, it just wouldn't work. If the Jewish partner is committed and the Catholic partner is a devout Catholic, then how are the children going to be brought up? They're going to be brought up amid conflict, and that's not a good way to bring up a child. So we would not recommend that sort of approach. Of course, if as it happens very, very often, the non-Jewish partner does convert. We've spoken about that, and then it can be a very successful marriage.
Do we see, if you get a marriage between someone who's from a Jewish background and someone who's Catholic, do we see any people of Jewish faith convert to Catholicism?
Well, I don't know of any cases. It may occur. What's more likely is that both partners will not be particularly religious, and children will be brought up without any faith at all. Which is sad, but it does happen. One thing I will say, though, is that if we're talking about the paramountcy, primacy of Jewish women, is that the Jewish status follows the mother. And so if the mother is Jewish and the father is not, the child will be Jewish and will be entitled to a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, and be as they were eligible to perform the mitzvot when he or she grows up.
I mean, we talked about conflict, and you talking about Judaism being a very faithful, a very hopeful and positive religion. That being the case, and this is a big question, I realise, Rabbi, but why was Nazi Germany so fearful of the Jews?
I think you'll have to ask anti-Semites that question. I really couldn't tell you. There is a perception that Jews are superior. It's not true. We don't believe it. The concept of the chosen people, we're chosen not for any special privileges, and God knows we haven't had many in 2,000 years of Jewish history in the diaspora, but we're chosen to serve God and to preach and to teach the word of God to others. And in fact, I still remember my rabbi in my childhood saying to me on my bar mitzvah, the Jews are not so much the chosen people as the choosing people. There was a rhymester by the name of Ewing who lived in the 19th century who wrote this very ugly saying. He said, "How odd of God to choose the Jews." And somebody wrote back and said, "It's not so odd. The Jews chose God." And that's really what happened. So, as I say, there have been misconceptions in history. We do not regard ourselves in any way as superior. We have our role. Every nation has their role. And please God, we hope that the world will allow us at long last to fulfill our role of being a light to the nations and bringing light and joy to the world.
Well, Rabbi Chaim Ingram, we appreciate you sharing the information about your faith, and all the best to you. Thank you so much indeed.
My pleasure, Spence. And again, Shana Tova.
Rabbi Chaim Ingram, who is in Adelaide for Rosh Hashanah next week, which is the beginning of the year from the 9th till the 11th of September.